Hello, everyone. Thank you all so very much for joining another edition of Comrades. This is our fourth episode. Again, thank you all so very much for watching us. We really do appreciate it. What we're going to do is we are going to get started with a summary. Specifically, this is a Deep Space Nine episode called Shadowplay. So we're going to play that for you, and then we are going to basically just get started. All right. All right, this is a summary for Deep Space Nine's Shadowplay. The episode begins with Dax and Odo in the Gamma Quadrant looking into Omicron particles that happen to be found on the planet. They beam down to a village on the planet. They are discovered by Protectorate Callius. Callius explains to Dax and Odo, after being assured they are no threat, that dozens of villagers have been disappearing. Intrigued, Odo begins investigating and vows to understand what happened to the villagers. Odo befriends a younger villager by the name of Taya. Taya is very reluctant to discuss her mother's disappearance because she is convinced her mother will return. Odo shares with Taya that he is a changeling, and that allows her to share information about her mother's disappearance. She volunteers that no one leaves the valley. Odo questions the village leader about why no one has left the village to search for their people, and the response is an assured response that he is sure no missing people are out there. Later, Odo, Dax, and Taya leave the village to go to an area where kids play. While out, Taya tries to hand Odo some berries, and her hand disappears but reappears when she pulls her hand back. Now, understanding what's happening, Dax understands the village is a large holographic projector generating Omicron particles to create matter. A component of the holographic generator is breaking down and people are being lost. Callius reveals this is no trick because he created the villagers and programmed them not to leave the village. To fix it, Dax needs to turn it off, but if she can't, the entire village will disappear. Villagers allow Dax to fix the generator. Callius wants to leave the program. Odo wants to know what will happen to the people of the village. All right, so that is the summary of that particular episode. There's a little piece that I left out, and that the piece that I left out basically is what I really want to talk about. When the leader of the village is basically like, "Nah, I want to end it. I want to live my life. I want to leave this place. I'm done." Odo then presses him and basically says, "Hey, look, what are you gonna do with these people? They deserve to live. They can think for themselves. They can feel. They can also reproduce. They can also die." And then the man is like, "But they're just a hologram. Like they're not real." And then Odo basically then says, "Well, why did you hold your granddaughter? What was the point in holding her?" And there was a moment where he held his granddaughter,
and they made him laugh.
So what he said in a tearful moment was he didn't want her to hurt, right? And so Odo then says, "So you care for them, you love them, even though they're not real, you still have these feelings for them."
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me was the poignant moment of that particular show, especially when it comes to AI. Odo proved that these people can think, they can feel, they can do things that any other sentient life can do. And what was also important to me was the fact that in this particular episode, they weren't presenting AI as a situation in which they can be harmful to society. They presented AI is basically in a benevolent sense, in a benevolent way, just coexisting with society. What were your thoughts?
Right. That was an interesting turn. A lot of times when we talk about AI, it's always doing something wrong. This one is like the episode I did last week, the Oasis on Enterprise. But these people didn't threaten anybody. They didn't pick up a gun. They didn't do anything like that. They were just existing. So again, it turns into do we have a right to create artificial beings? I mean, we already create people, but we do that through sex and pregnancy, the way it's been done for millions of years. But do you have a right to just create people and program them to be who they are?
And do you also have the right to terminate their life?
Correct.
That
Right.
was his sub argument as well. Do you have the right to do that?
We don't have the right to terminate our children that we create. And I didn't catch it from your summary. Maybe I missed it, but why did he create them to begin with?
So I'm sorry, there was a lot that I left out because I was trying to get to that 2-minute time frame. So the Dominion destroyed his home world. He left and he went to that world, and what he tried to do was recreate
I got you.
the life that he had at that particular time.
Okay.
So much of his life changed. People died. You know,
Yeah.
the holograms died. Other people were born.
Okay. And he was the only flesh and blood individual in that scenario.
Okay. But the thing is they don't know they're holograms.
100%.
They just think they're regular people, and they all just think they don't want to go beyond this point. And
now,
the thing about Oasis is that they knew that they were holograms. That's a different.
Yeah, right. So in this one, and I don't remember the episode specifically, but did they find out at the end that they were holograms?
They did towards the end, and they made a conscious decision to allow Dax to turn off the program so that she could fix the program. And they knew that if something were to happen, they could die.
I see. Interesting.
And they trusted her.
Yes, they did.
Right.
This is kind of like, I mean, maybe this is not connected, but this is like a Stargate episode of the same thing, but except the computer was, the inhabited space was getting smaller, and it was deleting people, and it just erased that person from the people's memory, and they didn't know they were holograms either.
I don't remember that episode from which show? The original
SG1. Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
Huh.
It was just erasing people from the system, but it also erased them from your mind, so nobody even knew anything was going on.
Okay.
So the interesting thing, I think, in this one, if I understand it right, is that these holograms were just your typical run-of-the-mill individual in a community, not any AIs with power over the society. Right?
No.
Well, they were the only society.
Right.
Yeah, they were just people. They were just people that he interacted with. They were his friends. They were his family. Just leading a normal existence, not really doing anything special, you know.
So, and was there any kind of leadership structure within the society that we saw?
Yes, there was. There was a village elder. There was a village elder,
and that was a hologram as well.
Yes.
Yes. But there was the one guy who wasn't a hologram.
Yeah, the guy who created them. It was at times it was like I'm not gonna say it was confusing, but it was like, why did you have these two? One could have served the same purpose. And it was very similar to me with Oasis. Jason, I don't know why I thought that today's episode you would be commenting on Oasis, but I see you're doing Flesh and Blood. So I didn't see Flesh and Blood. I thought we were gonna be talking about Oasis.
Oh, but we did Oasis last week though, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Yeah, I remember that now.
But yeah, I guess we could have done Oasis. Maybe it would have made more sense. But but here's the thing though. So not only do we talk about the right to create them, but and to kill them, but also giving them limitation. Like, how can they grow as individuals or society if they can't go beyond 100 meters?
Yeah.
Right. If you're limited in a way that you don't fully understand.
But check this out. Now that they know, you would have to assume that Dax would give them the ability to maintain that generator or whatever it's called. Sure. And so now that they know, they're gonna start working on it and fixing it, maybe creating even more so that they can leave.
So eventually there might be a whole planet of holograms.
They can only, like 100 meters maybe. You need resources. You need you need to be able to travel to grow. Like I don't think they would have whatever they need right there in their village.
Who says that they can't communicate?
Communicate with who? With other starships?
With Deep Space Nine? Not you
Oh,
know.
okay.
Now
Well,
they know.
if they can get resources from somewhere, then yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe build a some sort of a transporter device where they can create their own, out of pure energy. They can devise components that they need and have them materialized on the platform, similar to like a food replicator, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something about sentient beings, the question that they always ask themselves is, why am I here? What's my purpose? Now that they know that they're merely holographic constructions, that takes that part of the equation out. Then they're going to start to feel like, hey, this is just an existence, sort of like the villagers did in the Apple, where they were serving Vol. It was just an existence, according to to Kirk and everybody. Aren't these people going to just feel like, hey, this is just an existence? I don't have a purpose. I'm just here to keep this old man company,
Well,
they don't know.
No, it seems like I thought at the end, once that Dax fixed the machine, they were all aware that they were.
Yeah, they're all aware. They're aware at the end that they're all holograms.
I'm sorry, they don't know that that guy is one. I apologize for that.
They don't know that he's one also. That's right.
Correct.
That's right.
Well, the thing about and the purpose is that it means different things to different people. But like I've always said, your purpose, and this is actually a Star Trek thing, is to better yourself and to grow. People talk about what is the meaning of life, and it's kind of a question that shouldn't be asked, because the question is, what does it mean to you? You make the meaning of life.
Right.
It's not an internal thing that you go find it, or you go read a book and see it in the book, and you go over that hill. Oh, the meaning of life's over there, or God gives it to you. The meaning of life is completely dependent on your individual and what you determine your meaning of life is. You got to make that
create your own meaning for your life. What is it that you want to be or you want to do?
Right.
Yeah.
I want to be king, so I'm working on that.
Well, Jason, let me tell you something. With all these different jobs careers that you've had over your life, you're primed for it, man. You're primed for it. Like every time I'm learning about a different career, man.
I'm on my way.
Well, look, I think we've come to the end of. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. There's one more thing that I did want to talk about in the minute that we have. So Odo, Odo and Dax. So in this particular episode, what we saw from the two of them was that they were in lockstep. They both, number one, they both wanted to understand what happened to the villagers. Number two, once they realized what the issue was, they were both advocating for sentience and the right to protect the lives of those villagers. And I thought that was that was a pretty good thing. It made sense from the perspective of Dax, but from Odo, we were able to see a different not dimension, but a different level or a depth to him in terms of how he saw things. And it made me wonder if he saw it from that perspective because of the fact that he was different. He was a changeling, and for most of his life, as far as he knew, he was the only one. And so he was different and unique. And so therefore uniqueness needed to be valued.
Well, and nobody treated him as sentient in the beginning, right? He was just an oddity where they experimented on him.
True.
It's like funny, silly putty.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
And they had a lot of mutual respect for each other too, Dax and Odo. So they work well together.
Yeah.
No doubt. Okay. Jason did Flesh and Blood. I'm going to let Jason introduce his episode and then his video.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason. This episode is an episode of Star Trek Voyager called Flesh and Blood. It's pretty much about Herodians chasing holograms that they've created. And of course, shit goes bad. Stuff goes bad. All right, let's go with the tape.
This is the first one of the night.
Hello, everyone. This is Jason M, and once again, I'm here to talk about Star Trek. Today, we're going to talk about the Star Trek Voyager episode called Flesh and Blood, whereas the crew comes upon a space station that has 43 dead Hirogen on it. And these 43 dead Hirogen were killed by holographic programs that were programmed by the Hirogen. So a while back, Janeway gave the Hirogen some technology, holographic technology, so they can hunt, so they can use them as prey, instead of hunting living beings. Now, the ones that they gave them, the technology they had, weren't good enough, so the Hirogen upgraded them, and now these things are sentient, and they are learning, and they are fighting back. The holographic programs fought back, killed the Hirogens, and jumped aboard a ship that had holographic emitters on it, and the pursuit for them started. Voyager and the Hirogen joined forces to chase them down. They kidnapped the doctor because they thought he was enslaved, and the doctor, once he got there, he started feeling compassionate for him, for the holograms, and now he's fighting for this side. They also kidnapped B'Elanna, which, because the doctor wasn't good enough to fix the problems they had, they needed an actual engineer to help them with their wounded. And B'Elanna is totally against it. She's fighting back, but the doctor convinces her that, hey, these guys aren't the bad guys because the Hirogens are the ones that started it. So she trusts the doctor, so she falls in line as well. Turns out that these holographic programs get the upper hand on the Hirogen. They send them down to a planet where they can barely breathe. And now the holograms want to be the hunters. And they have an appetite for revenge against the Hirogen and actually against Voyager. And the doctor is stuck between his Voyager family and his newfound holographic friends. It's a terrible rock between a hard place for him to be in. But it turns out the holograms are just as crappy as the Hirogen. And they enjoy the hunt just as much as the Hirogen did. But this doesn't sit right with Voyager, and it certainly doesn't sit right with Doctor. So eventually they end up taking the holograms offline with B'Elanna's help and one Cardassian Hirogen that listened to what B'Elanna had to say. So in the end, the holograms did not kill the Hirogen. They were stopped, and the rest of the Hirogen were saved. I think it serves the Hirogen right, but I don't want to talk about the morality of the Hirogen. I'd rather talk about the morality itself of creating sentient beings for such a task. I mean, we all, really, basically the task is slavery. I mean, we all use our technology. All our technology is inherently slaves. So, but once you create sentient beings, does that seem like the right thing to do?
Very good question.
All right. So yeah, at the end I said a Cardassian Hirogen. That was actually a Cardassian hologram because they had made all Alpha Quadrant holograms they got from Voyager system. So the point being, gents, is at what point, since slavery is inherent to our technology, at what point do we grant them freedom from that slavery?
Yeah, I think at the point at which something becomes sentient and understands its place in the world and has its own desires and feelings and emotions, that you're no longer on moral high ground if you keep that thing enslaved to do your own wishes. And I don't
Right.
care if it looks like a flesh and blood individual or if it looks like a machine, if it's got that sentient ability and can be shown to be no different than we are, except for the fact that it's a mechanical machine instead of a biologic machine, I think you have to treat it as if it's a person, a living entity, and you have to give it the rights that it's due, that we all enjoy.
Is it as simple as it being able to ask for it?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
showing the
I don't
desires,
know.
you know?
I don't know. Maybe there might have to be something more to it, because obviously you can program something to do that, right?
So
Because like we do testing on animals, we don't do testing on humans. Is the only thing that's different because the animals can't protest?
Yeah, I
so
think that's it.
So I think and this happened also in the next generation. So there's a simple test, you know, and Odo said it in the last episode that I mentioned. If it can think, if it can feel, if it can reproduce, if it has feeling, well, I just said that. Those are some of the basic requirements. Maybe not so much feelings, especially when you're thinking about artificial intelligence. The feelings might not necessarily lend itself towards that, but
We don't know that.
we don't. But what I'm saying, if it can think, if it can think for itself, if it can ask itself some simple questions, and Roy alluded to it a little earlier, who am I? Where do I fit into this? Right? Those are some simple things that helps us to realize what sentience is. And if you're able to, through discussion, determine that these questions have been asked, and also those other criteria have been filled, then I think that's sentience.
I think Jason makes a good point, though, when he talks about animals and the fact that the experimentation we do on animals is because they don't complain about it. And I think that's exactly right. Animals don't have a voice. They don't have the ability to vote, right? They don't have the ability to verbally complain about what they're going through. And while there are a lot of people that are working towards more humane treatment of animals and the outlawing of scientific experimentation on animals, we still have a long way to go in that regard. And I think if you create a sentient machine that is essentially unable to communicate and doesn't have the rights to vote or to express itself or to complain, you're going to have the same situation where those possibly sentient creations are going to be enslaved because they're not going to be given a voice. And I think that's a big concern going forward.
So I guess my question is, these artificial intelligence, whatever it is that we build, are we saying that we wouldn't give them the ability to communicate?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that perhaps initially we wouldn't give them the rights to have a voice within our society such that they could demand meaningful changes to their status. They could demand the rights that they need.
I can see society doing exactly what you suggest.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I don't really care what society would want.
Yeah.
I would bestow sentience onto.
Well, they're inherently there would be property, you know. And it's weird to have the same conversation, but we've had it over like human beings. We've had this conversation has had to be had over with human beings.
Oh, sure.
I know, which is why like my stance is very consistent.
Right.
Like it doesn't really matter. Like
it'll be consistent. I mean, it's not consistent because we don't know what it looks like yet.
Right.
Well, we're talking about a consciousness that doesn't exist. So you're talking about a brand new form of consciousness, and we're forming structures and barriers based on what we know about us, which may not apply to something else.
Well, and Jermaine, I think if you have something that you detect sentience in, right, and you decide to treat it as a sentient being, that's great. But what about the rest of society? If that sentient machine goes out into society and it's not treated as a sentient machine, sentient being, it's treated just as a machine, and it doesn't have any rights other than within your domain or your home or whatever, that's just as bad, I think, as if it had no rights at all, because it then has a taste of having rights, but it can't actually use it to any effect.
So those are some moral questions, and verging on political, social political, and those are never good. Those are never easy. Those take a long time.
That's why we have to talk about AI.
And so what I'm proposing is how I feel, right?
Yeah,
right.
Not about society. There was another point that I wanted to make, but you brought that one up, and so I had to respond and I forgot my point.
Sorry.
Well, in the episode, it's like these holograms were created specifically to be hunted and to learn and to get better. They took off the safety protocols. They made them as good as they made them way better than what Voyager gave them. And then so they turns around, and now the holograms are better than they are, and like the doctor's on their side, the B'Elanna comes over there, and they have a good relationship. So eventually the doctor convinces B'Elanna to also be on their side. Like, you got to help these people. These are people just like me. If he wasn't there, she wouldn't have gone for it. But like, it's like, hey, I'm a hologram. You guys know me, trust me, right? These people are just like me.
Yeah.
And it turns out that they weren't just like him, because they had a different purpose. They had a different program.
Right.
And
different priorities.
And it turns out they were more like the Herodian than they were like the Voyager crew.
Yeah.
And actually the doctor ended up disobeying Janeway's orders, and between them there was a kind of a scuffle at the end where he felt bad because he disobeyed her orders to save these people, who and then turned around and ended up being violent people. And he sort of felt bad.
You know what I think is an analogy here is, it's almost as if the doctor's relationship to these holograms that are engineered to be more violent and faster and stronger, it's almost like Kirk and Khan, where we've got these augments that are designed to be better, faster, stronger, and more violent. And how did we deal with those? And as we know, it didn't go well. Right?
They exiled them. They tried to kill them and exile them. Right.
And in the case of the last J.J. Abrams movie, or no, maybe not the last one, but the one where we saw Khan, they put him in cryo chambers and left him locked in a storeroom somewhere. So, there's a lot of implications with that. I mean, is that
mixed bag on how we deal with sentience? It to me, it says more about how we treat the things that we fear.
Oh yeah,
right.
So,
well, it's also about us, because we know it's also about us pushing right up to the edge of where we can go, and a little bit past, because a lot of times we see things coming before we.
Yeah, where do you draw the line, though, right?
Right.
No, that's the problem. Something I thought of, though, you mentioned something. I think the doctor was programmed with the Hippocratic Oath, which is to care for people.
Yes,
right, and treat them. These holograms were programmed to kill and to hunt.
Yes,
so obviously you get, there's the argument there.
So they became the villain of the show, whereas they were actually just doing what they were programmed to do.
Exactly.
Is to be hunters.
But so my question is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My question is, not my question. I guess my statement is, we all have primal instincts, primal urges, but we're all able to grow if given the opportunity. Not saying that it's going to be perfect, essentially, but at some point, once you're free, and this is no longer meaning you have to fight in order to live. This is no longer your reality. what will be your reality? How will you adjust? And to me, that's also part of being sentient as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I'm looking at that too from the perspective of the whole nature versus nurture thing as it pertains to AI, because that's kind of an interesting thing too. So
Data lore.
What's that?
Data lore.
Yes, exactly. Not only how these things are their nature, how they're designed, and in this case, they were designed to be violent, to survive or to kill, but then also how they're nurtured, and if that is reinforced all along. How do you overcome that? And maybe that would be easier for AI being able to rewrite their program or learn and make so many calculations per second. And maybe they can overwrite bad code, which for biological creations like us is very hard to do, right? If you're raised and you have traumatic experiences as a child and you're raised in a violent atmosphere, you're going to grow up to be a violent child, I think. And that's going to be very hard to overcome. Maybe that would be easier for sentient machines.
Well, that's another one of those Star Treks where you don't know what happens to them at the end. They got deleted. All we know is they got deleted. Deleted. And then, well, I don't know about deleted. They were not. They got deactivated. Is a proper word for a hologram.
Right.
We don't know if they were deleted, reprogrammed, reconstructed, or put in cold storage or what. As we often get in Star Trek.
Right.
We leave the planet. We don't know what happened.
We never revisit. Never revisit.
We warp out and hope for the best.
Hope you guys are good from now on.
Unless you go back and find Khan,
Yeah.
Right. Oh, and they didn't even go. They were like, "Oh, we thought this was City Alpha 6." Sorry.
Well, and I think this episode is particularly interesting at this time in society where we're developing AI so fast, and we're seeing a lot of that, or a good percentage of that, being put into military weapons. Drones that fly over that are, they're looking and trying to use facial recognition to identify targets and then inform the people to launch missiles. Yeah, we've identified this guy, and we've seen reports where these artificial recognition programs tend to be biased because they get trained more on white faces than they do on black faces or other minorities, and that they can often be far more susceptible to error when identifying a non-Caucasian face, which is horrifying to think that this is being used this way and that there's such a high percentage of a chance that it could be wrong.
That's why I stay in the house.
I don't blame you.
But they also, not even the missiles, they have those. You see the small drones that have the small bullets with the explosive.
Right, or small electric, small charge in it, and it can just fly in and put a hole right in your skull.
Man, it's so scary. In a way, it's good because the least amount of the more we could lower collateral damage is the better. But it's still this whole idea of the AI just seeking out and
Anyway. Yeah, they call those murder bots, don't they?
Oh,
I think. Well, look, guys, we have come to the end of this particular episode. This was a good discussion. This was a real conversation, a real discussion. I really do appreciate it. And we definitely did talk about the relationship between these characters and how they arrived at the decisions that they made. So excellent show to you all. Thank you all for joining us. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, share. Tell everyone that you know about Trekker's Delight and about Comrades. Again, peace and long life. See you.
See ya.
Out.